were no X-Men. Who would bring the mutants together? Who would form the group and lead them? In Age of X, Magneto is the one who stands between mutant kind's survival and their extinction. This story and reality imagines a world very different from Earth 616, where, to be fair, Magneto has actually led the mutants before, but not like this. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda, and today we are talking Age of X. The story starts off with our mutant resistance gathered seemingly in an ongoing final stand for their survival. As they prepare to fight, they tell stories of how they all came to be there and how much they lost and sacrificed along the way. The first story recounts the origin of Basilisk. This reality is Cyclops. Here, Basilisk was a prisoner held at Alcatraz. There, mutants are basically held on death row, sentenced to die just for existing. In Basilisk's case, he wasn't actually on death row, or wasn't really on death row in the same way. Instead, he actually acted as their executioner. Arcade, who runs the prison, basically ordered to have Basilisk's eyelids removed and created a visor with their own controller so that the prison could use him to exterminate the other mutants. Fortunately, Basilisk managed to use the controller to unleash his powers himself, using them to kill all the guards and Arcade, who ran the prison. While he told the other prisoners to flee, Basilisk stayed on, prepared to stand and fight. No one really knows fully how he escaped. Also, yes, if you haven't caught on, Basilisk is Scott Summers in this reality. We also learn the story of Sam Guthrie, aka Cannonball, and Paige Guthrie, aka Husk. After their family was rounded up, they managed to evade capture and tried to track them in transport trucks. However, by the time they did catch up with the guards who were moving them, it was already too late. It seems their folks were not actually captured alive, but instead were killed in the ensuing chaos. Husk swears revenge on the people who took her family from her, and Cannonball attempts to subdue his sister, instead offering that they build a place that they can call home. We also learn of the Doctor's backstory. Dr. Rao is a human, it's true, but she chooses to stay with the mutants after her own people turned on her when she stood up against leaking a cure for the X gene into the water supply. Wolverine was tasked with stopping the leak from happening, and Rao revealed herself as his informant. She helped to destroy the cure by administering the only dosages that they had left, a small batch, into him, so his healing factor could basically metabolize it. The only way to actually destroy the cure on short notice, as there were reinforcements en route to the lab. However, when Wolverine asked afterwards to be killed as the cure had suppressed his healing factor, causing the poisonous adamantium coating on his bones to take effect, Rao refused. After fighting back against one of her former colleagues in the lab and killing him, she couldn't bring herself to take another life. I mean, after all, she is a doctor. She blames herself for much of what has happened to the mutants, as she was one of the scientists who worked to remove their X gene, whether they wanted it or not. Well, initially it was because people said they wanted it, but then they were wanting to take that cure and give it to people forcibly. She was like, wait a minute, it's not what I thought we were doing. Next, we learn of how Magneto became the leader of this resistance. Toad in this universe is the one who takes us into this story. He recounts a time when the last of the mutant resistance were basically holed up in the Chrysler building. They believed that Magneto had perished, but he and Mystique managed to infiltrate their way into this final stand, putting themselves between the human forces and the mutants that were left there. While non-ferrous exonyms, this world's version of Sentinels, were on their way, Magneto simply told the forces that if they stood down, none of them would actually need to be harmed. You see, his plan was to simply save and relocate his people that were holed up there, which he did by literally moving the city's buildings using his powers. Well, not all of them, but that obviously kind of became the legend. He moved all the ones with enough steel in them for him to actually manipulate them and move them with his powers, with the buildings flying right over the malicious heads. Wow. What a sight. What an epic moment. Magneto becoming leader, just being like, gonna move all these buildings. 1,000 days after all the last surviving mutants came together, seeing the buildings as a beacon and gathering to Magneto's side, the fight continues on. It's been almost 3 years, and every day is an intense battle. We learn that Magneto, as leader of the last surviving mutants, has his own elite force, his own version of the X-Men, seemingly. Prominent members among them include Cannonball, who seems to be the team's tactical leader in this reality, and Legacy, the name Rogue chooses to go by in this reality. However, there is another name for Rogue here as well that she doesn't so much like, the Reaper. Now, this is because when mutants die, as Tempo does here, Legacy absorbs the mutants into herself, killing them by draining their life force with her touch, but also using her powers to absorb their own mutant abilities and their memories, so they will always live on. So when mutants are on their deathbed, rather than just die as they would, Rogue gets to basically keep them within her, and so their memories stories continue on. I really love this approach for Rogue's character. I gotta say, I already love what they did with Pixie in this reality. Instead of looking fairy-like, has dragon-like wings. There's just a lot of cool versions of characters. Basilisk too, super cool. After the battle is done, the Force Warriors arrive and rebuild the barriers that were destroyed, as they are destroyed every day, of course, before the battle ends up happening. This group is a team of 5 elite mutants who are kept mostly off the battlefield and focus purely on rebuilding defenses each and every day. Sound familiar? Kinda sounds like a group that may have helped to inspire the 5 of Krakoa from the modern day main continuity. Among the Force Warriors ranks are David Haller, Hellion, Betsy Braddock Psylocke, Carmella Uncione Standoff, and finally Rachel Summers Revenant. As most people fall back to the fortress to unwind after the long, hard day of fighting, we get to look at what their relationships are like. Storm is with Namor in this reality, both bonding over being basically godlike monarchs. Cyclops' Basilisk is with Frenzy. Iceman and Psylocke are an item in here. The other thing we learn is that Wolverine can no longer fight, as using his powers will actually trigger a bomb within him, which is full of the X-Gene cure that Rao once worked on. But apparently he did survive up until this point, so hey, that's something. I honestly wasn't expecting that after we got the story of how he basically gets captured after trying to remove the X-Gene cure. We also learn a bit of the world and how the Phoenix losing control is basically what triggered this reality. At least that's what it seems so far. Gambit and the other mutants think back on old times and what their lives were like before the war broke out. Some wonder if they would have ever been friends had they come together without the unifying cause of mutant survival, or if things could have been different if they had come together earlier. Gambit, however, doesn't believe that what happened here is unavoidable, even if the mutants had come together before. Interesting considering the history we know from Earth 616. Previously as well in Toad's story about how Magneto saved all the mutants who were in the Chrysler building, we also learn of how the humans at one point attempted to trick mutants into gathering at a fake safe house in Westchester, but how this was a trap and the safe house was burned down with all the mutants who came to find refuge there supposedly still trapped inside. Sound familiar? Sounds familiar. Woo! That's a interesting take on that. While Legacy is taking her time to return to the fortress, called onto the field for Tempo's last rites and still processing all the memories she just took in, it's revealed that the barrier has actually had a breach. The breach, however, was not a human team seemingly attempting to infiltrate Magneto's fortress, but instead was another mutant. One that has been kept as an inmate within the brig in this supposed mutant safe haven. Although it's a mutant safe haven, but they have a prison that has mutants in it, with this mutant's powers being deemed too unstable. None other than Catherine Pryde, who supposedly returned from outside the mutants' encampment and is retrieved by Magneto and given back a helmet to block her powers and prevent her from turning intangible. Magneto says that this occurrence should be kept secret from the others, worried about morale. He also says he will ask Catherine why she was out there when she regains consciousness, with her having been knocked unconscious by the mutants that responded. As Magneto flies off to return Catherine to the brig and the AI mutant Danger, who runs the brig, Legacy retrieves a camera that she noticed Catherine had been holding before she was attacked, and it was knocked out of her hand, going unnoticed by the rest of the mutants. Legacy does not know why she wants to keep this discovery to herself and not share it with the others, but she ultimately chooses to explore this solo, and finds all the pictures on the camera are, mysteriously, blank. She decides to take the camera to this universe's version of Madison Jeffries, a technopath. Madison agrees to help his friend Legacy, interviewing the camera about the photos that it contains, and later allowing Legacy to kiss him so that she can borrow some of his powers. Legacy then infiltrates the brig after attempting to convince Magneto to just let her interrogate Catherine herself, to no avail. While Catherine doesn't have much to say about her adventure outside of the boundaries of the fortress, Legacy, after being caught by Danger, ends up running into another, even more mysterious prison in the brig, the Professor. As he is seemingly comatose, Legacy uses her powers to look into the mind of the Professor, and also ends up tapping into his power as well, tapping into the minds of basically every other mutant nearby and accidentally causing some, like Magneto, to even suffer seizures. Who is this Professor, and what really caused the existence of this alternate reality known as Age of X? Legacy seeks answers after being forced to go on the run, but will she get them? Well, you'll have to wait to see, because that's about it for this one. If you're itching to know more about the secrets of Age of X like Legacy was, let us know in the comments, and maybe we'll tell you more in a future video. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.